Brian, before we got to the end of the commercial break, you had mentioned a number of the benefits that had come out of creating this Black community only type space, this therapeutics model that would allow for African people of African descent to grapple with the impacts of white supremacy, and whether it be a macro, micro, or some other sort of aggression. And there were a number of benefits that were created. We had the African Centered Saturday School. We had a space where we were able to, because Black people were on the same page and had cultivated trust and relationship as a part of this going through this therapeutic process, had also been able to secure a number of political wins. But we also were able to create some pretty effective institutions. Talk to us a little bit about the Africana Research Institute that was also born out of the work of Sankofa Circles.
Absolutely. And I know you've talked a lot about the turmoil we went through. We're not going to get into that. But in a nutshell, we ended up, after protests, a lot of people saw on CNN, hundreds of people, white and black, gathered chanting Ashe. But it really started with Sankofa, and it ended with us creating the state of Pennsylvania's first Africana Research Institute and really rejuvenating the Africana Studies program at Penn State University, a multi-million, I think almost $8 million initiative that all came from these circles. I lost my job in the process, but it was a blessing. We ended up moving to Pittsburgh. This is right before Lurie went to law school, and that's where we formalized the model. We started Sankofa Community Empowerment. Shout out to the founders, Lakeisha Wolf, Asada Richards, Joe Dawkins, rest in peace, Chinnis, Gabriel, Charlene Morris. But we started the model. We started having these circles in Pittsburgh, out of Chatham University and Pitt University. We took it to Philly, to Temple University. We took it to Houston, and really started having these weekly meetings, having summer retreats. And those went on. We had it at NYU's law school, and really started working, meeting on a weekly basis and building our respective communities. We would come together in the summer to connect and had a national organization that was thriving. And then after about 5 or 6 years of this, when we started having families and getting more immersed in our jobs, all of us kind of found ways to utilize our model in the work that we were doing. In my work as an educator, Lurie used the model in her work, her legal work. Our sister Asada created the Sankofa Research Institute. So we all kind of took the model and did some different things with it. But nevertheless, the foundation of our organization and work were these Sankofa circles.
Yeah. And so after we had left those spaces and had continued on with the work that we were doing, in addition to all the things that you've mentioned, we realized that this was something that, frankly, our community needed. And for us, it was something that when we weren't having Sankofa circles, it felt like something was off, right? It felt like something just wasn't quite right, because that's what happens when you have access to a space that is intentionally designed for you to be able to grow through collective challenges that we're experiencing. And because we don't often have mechanisms to get our communities on the same page, it ended up being this dynamic tool, this dynamic resource that we have continued to do additional work out of. Talk to us about the ways in which Sankofa circles show up today, because we're going to be dropping the link for people who want to participate in the circle we're having next week on Tuesday. And let's talk about why these things still matter.
Well, we have a video that you can go. If you go to Sankofa Empowerment Workshops on YouTube, you'll see a Sankofa session that we did, I want to say in 2013, with a real diverse community in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. When we took it off the college campuses, our Sankofa network invested in a cafe where we used to have our sessions. But it was really profound because in these circles, you would have so much diversity of Black folks. You might have somebody working from Goldman Sachs who has to wear the mask every day and is just looking for a support space where he or she can come together with the community, next to maybe somebody who just moved here from the Caribbean, next to maybe one of my students who has still got one foot in the street, might be a part of a street organization. And you see us, and you'll see it in the video of us all going through this collective journey. And, even when we were in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, we would have a Sankofa about education. And by the end, when we got to the responsibility portion of the community, somebody would say, well, we should start our own Saturday school. Someone would say, well, we can use my space over here at the library. And before you know it, we had an African-centered Saturday school. So really just seeing that these structured mechanisms are essential for us as people of African descent. Everyone came to America. Every group came to America already a part of a cultural circle that was designed specifically to sustain them and to empower them. That's why when you come to Black communities, you see the Asian communities, you see the Arab community, you see all these different communities who are already coming, pulling their monies together, who already have spaces to build and grow. Black people were never allowed to do this. We came out of slavery into Jim Crow where we weren't even really allowed to gather and have these kinds of conversations. So for us, as simple as it seems, just having an affinity space that was intentional about building community, like what we call a tribe, was just essential. So we've taken the model. I utilize it in the work that I do with Inspiring Minds. We run My Brother's Keeper for Central Brooklyn, 50 schools. So I use the model with my young men's groups. She talked about in my bio, I'm the co-founder of the Nate Parker Foundation. Nate Parker and I, the actor director, we work with almost 200 filmmakers, most from HBCUs, and we use the SCRR model. We create a rites of passage through that gets them on the same page so that they can create films together that benefit our community.
I want to pause right there. The reason that the Sankofa model in that particular space was so necessary, and Brian, I'm so glad that you raised this example, is because we don't just need a bunch of black filmmakers. We need black filmmakers who are going to center the needs of black people, right? We don't just need a bunch of black lawyers. We need black lawyers who are going to center the needs of black people. We don't just need a bunch of black doctors. We need or bankers or educators. We need doctors, educators, and bankers from our community who are going to center our needs. And remember, Brian, I always tell this story. I've told y'all this story before. When I was at NYU at law school, and Jonah, I just dropped the link into the Zoom chat, so you can share, Jonah, both the example, the video. The first link is the video of a Sankofa Circle excerpt that we have done in the past. Newbie, I'm going
and
to
it's
drop that link
dark.
for y'all
I
to
want you to
see.
know that we like to, these are safe spaces, so the lighting is dark. We wanted you to get the vibe, but we didn't want to expose. Some people sharing this stuff didn't want this online when they got to go to work with white folks. So just keeping that in mind.
And we respect the privacy. Remember when I told y'all that story about how I was in the laundry room doing my laundry, and I was talking with one of my Jewish friends, and he was like, "Dude, Lurie, I'm totally in favor for diversity, but like I learned in Hebrew school, I can't help you if I haven't been able to help myself." And I was like, "Wait, what? Where'd you learn that? Hebrew school? What's this?" And so I realized that Sankofa circles were kind of providing a Hebrew school function, but for Black people. In that, we didn't have an after-school program that was going to teach us our history, our language, our challenges, our rich history and culture and heritage. And he did. And because he had that as a young Jewish child, and because his ability to be considered, to get a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah and be considered an adult in his community required him to master what was being provided for him in Hebrew school, that's a part of why it was that he and his community were able to be as effective as they are in providing for themselves. And I realized that the Sankofa circles were, in a sense, providing that very same thing for us. So I just wanted to say that because it's really important that people are clear about the functions that we need to create, the institutions that need to be created to put us on a pathway for care, yes, but for being as healed as we possibly can be from the effects of internalized and external white supremacy. So Jonah, I've shared 2 links in the chat. One of them is the link to the Sankofa Circle example, a snippet of one that we've had in the past. It's the only one that we've ever allowed to be shared in a public space like on YouTube. And then in the second link is the link to the event that we're going to have next week on Tuesday. Brian, you and I are going to be hosting a Sankofa Circle,
Right.
which is kind of
Can't
dope
wait.
because you and I always have facilitated Sankofa
That's right.
Circles. Yeah, go right ahead.
Amongst other than, one of the things that kind of sparked this is, if you guys remember last month, Lurie was talking a lot about the rise of Christian white nationalism after Charlie Kirk. And I was going through, I think she did 2 or 3 videos, and I was reading through the comments and realizing that a lot of people had a lot to say about it. And there were even some debates where people were saying, well, we're Christians first before we're black. And all of these different conversations were going on. And I was thinking, wow, number one, Lurie, just commending you in this space, you, Karen, and Clay, just for creating a village and a tribe for so many black people to feel connected, right? To help them to just get through their days. But as I was reading through the comments, it hit me, it would be great to have these individuals in a circle. Because not only in the comments in yours, even on my Facebook, seeing black people arguing and whatnot, thinking, man, if we could only get them in a Sankofa circle, we could there could be a lot of healing. And it's not just a conversation. We use a model called the SCRR. The S stands for self. So the first wave of questions are designed for anybody who's in the session to enter it, right? One of the things we realize in our journey with Sankofa is a lot of times the people who are in the know might do all of the talking. So you might in a Sankofa circle have somebody who's been in the struggle for 30, 40 years who is with somebody who's a freshman in college who just learned they were African yesterday, right? So the first wave of questions are all centered around yourself and anybody can answer. So if we're looking at the prison industrial complex, how many of you know somebody who's locked up? Right? Because we want to make sure everyone can enter the conversation. So the first wave deals with self and your personal connection to the topic. The next wave, the collective, how does this impact us collectively? Now we transition from our own personal experience to looking at, wow, maybe you don't know anybody who's been locked up. But if 1 in 3 black men is incarcerated or has an experience like this, how does this impact our community as a whole? And then the R stands for root, Sankofa. Every Sankofa has to take us to the root of the issue, right? We need to understand that it's no coincidence that those of us who came here in chains just so happen to be the ones in chains, right? We're going to learn about slavery and then convict leasing and the black codes and the birth of the prison industrial complex, right? Which is more of the educational piece to it. And then we leave with the second R, which is responsibility, right? We leave thinking about now that we know this, what is our responsibility? It might be as simple as I need to read more and educate more. We leave resources as well. Or it might be something we can do right now, the example that I gave you. We could start our own African centered Saturday school. So this model has really been a blessing. And after 7, 8 sessions, when you go through this with the community, you have a connection where you can invest your money into something collectively, where you have a sense of community that oftentimes we just don't have. A lot of black people, it's hard to stay optimistic and hopeful when you're not tied to a village. Sankofa provides a village that is essential for black people, not only for survival, right? I like to think I put it in AI. How does somebody who is enslaved maintain a healthy mental state? And if you look at what AI says, it says, man, you're going to need support. You're going to need to be grounded in spirituality. You're going to need to be a part of a network that has micro victories and battles. You're going to need long-term plans, and all of these different things, whether it was in slavery or whether today, are essential for keeping black folks motivated, keeping us moving, and just allowing us to survive and thrive.
Yeah. No, and it's important that we not just think about how one of the reasons we are having this conversation about doing this online is because you and I do this still in community, right? We do this in community, but we do them live when we're in community usually. We actually have been shifting between live and virtual. I'm sorry, I meant in person. When we do it in community, and we have been shifting between in person and virtual. Coming through the pandemic, we shifted to a full virtual model, and it ended up being a lifeline for so many of us. And I say us because as much as you and I are part of the facilitation core for these spaces, we also benefit emotionally,
Oh yeah.
spiritually, mentally
No.
from these spaces. And so in addition to the work that we do, because we still have Sankofa circles, not as often as we used to, where we're at in Brooklyn, so we still do that work in person. People are able to show up. It is a safe space. We don't have it in a place that has requirements that everyone be given equitable access. These are private conversations, similar to the way that I mentioned our Jewish community brothers and sisters before, how they have private conversations that I cannot go to. Our Korean brothers and sisters, our Asian brothers and sisters sometimes have private elements and conversations of their culture that I cannot go to. This is for us. And the reason I'm sharing it on a platform that is for the world is because we need to, one, normalize our understanding that these sorts of therapeutic needs they exist and they're necessary. And it's important that we are crystal clear that everybody else got private spaces where they can
Right.
have these conversations and do this work.
Right.
And so shout out to those of you who have already started getting tickets for the event. Like I said, we got room for 30 people, and we're starting with
Oh,
30 people because we have not done this with an outside group of folks like this before. So,
that's right.
so we are going to start small. We're thinking about how we can build up on this and continue this in some way that's meaningful, it's practical. But this is going to be sort of what service project you and I are contributing, because I think at this point it is so crystal clear to me that we cannot continue to move into this next era with the same sort of limited approaches to liberation for our communities that we've had in the past.
Now more than ever. In our last Sankofa circle, we had a discussion and we were just talking about how a lot of people who weren't receptive to coming to Sankofa circles, maybe I make a lot of money and I'm in a corporate space and
I
things
know.
are going well for me. A lot of these people who, might have been resistant before have been either let go or in this climate have realized I need a village. So I feel like now more than ever, it's critically important that we devise our own plan. No one is coming to save us, y'all. like no one is coming to save us. So these Sankofa circles are really critical for allowing us to think outside of the box, to realize we have all that we need. And the Sankofa circle that we'll do virtually is not the end all be all, but one of the other things that we would like to do moving forward is work with specific groups so that we can train you to have your own Sankofa circles with your own organizations, right? I've been traveling with Lurie over the past few weekends. We went to Clay Cane's event in Maryland, and I got a chance to talk to a lot of your listeners and hear some of their stories and some of their
Shout out
struggles.
to
We went to
Clay and
Arizona
Reese.
last weekend and with the NAACP and hearing some of their struggles and some of their stories. We would also like to pass this model on. We've been training different groups, whether it be church groups, to on this model so that they can take it back with your family, so you can have these conversations. And part of the reason that I have remained so optimistic, I work in over 30 schools and some of the roughest schools in New York, some of the most challenging, but I always feel connected. I always feel hopeful because I'm tied to a village. Lurie, what you hear every day is not just Lurie. Not only is she standing on the shoulders of her ancestors, she's tied to a community that has poured into her of elders. She's connected, and we see the power of having these circles when you go out on your own, when you know your strength. And I just know there are so many people in my family, so many people who aren't tied to a mechanism like this, and it really hinders you from being the best version of yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And, the challenge is that we want to be able to provide a space where not only this service can happen, but as you mentioned, so that we can also help train other organizations to incorporate it as well. Because one of the challenges that we often see, just to reiterate something that you just noted, one of the challenges that we often see is that even if you're coming together to do a project or to do a thing, without the fundamental addressing of the baggage that all of us bring into these spaces, we bring that baggage into our organizing. We bring
Right.
that baggage into our memberships and organizations. We bring
Our
that baggage
families.
into our yes, into our family structures and circles and spaces. And so being able to, when you said that I am tied to a community, that first time I came on Karen Hunter's show in 2017, when people were like, who is this girl? And I love all of y'all who were listening that day, because some of y'all been rocking with me ever since then. I came with Sankofa analysis. The reason they've invited me back, while they may not have known it, shout out to Jameson, who I remember walked me from the door of Karen's studio, that super tiny studio they had her in, to the elevator. He was like, yo, that was dope. We're going to have to bring you back. The reason they were bringing me back, the reason y'all experienced what you experienced when I was talking on air in that moment, was because I came with Sankofa. That notepad that me and Karen always talk about, how I had a notepad full, a legal pad size full of notes, that was Sankofa analysis. And so the entire time that y'all have been engaging with me, that is the sort of work that I do. And so it is important to me that this not be one of them things that I benefit from or that you benefit from, that we take to the grave. We've really been wrestling, y'all, and we haven't finalized or fleshed things out, but we're really in the process of wrestling with how we can really take a model like this and ensure that all of our communities have it. Now, the topic we're going to have tomorrow, or not tomorrow, excuse me, next week, Tuesday. And on Tuesday, this is going to be Tuesday the 18th at 7:30 Eastern. We thought about doing an East Coast version and a West Coast version, but that's a little too much right now because they're a lot of work. And that's another thing I want to say. These are not, just because you and I know how to do this now, like I can come up with the Sankofa questions, and it's a lot of work. So we thought about trying to do an East Coast version and a West Coast version. We settled on just doing one that starts late on the evening on the East Coast so that people on the West Coast might be able to participate. It will, depending on how this goes, we may try to do another one perhaps in December. Again, you and I are working on a couple of things to see how we can more systematize this sort of offering for folks. Haven't finalized that yet, but we're in the process of doing that. But I want us to be clear. A lot of times y'all listen to me and you be like, that girl got the words. No, baby, I got 20 something years in the game of being trained into how to use my words. I got 20 something years in the game of being exposed to debate spaces. When y'all listen to Sam Reynolds, those of you who are part of narrative, part of media,
Sam.
and when Sam Reynolds, shout out to brother Sam, when Sam Reynolds talks about the fact that he and I met in the Sankofa discussion space in Brooklyn, this is what he's talking about. And when he talks about the fact when Lurie and her husband, when they get going, this is what he's talking about. And so these spaces, they are emotionally intensive, right? I'm not even going to hold you, right? They can be. There have been moments where we have had a lot of people on the same page. There have been some Sankofa circles where there is vigorous debate and disagreement and an eruption of emotion. When we're talking about, issues that our brothers bring into the space, issues that our sisters bring into the space. We're talking about relationships, and we're talking about all of the many ways that we have experienced the oppression that we face. It can be an emotionally wrought experience, and that's why we start with, and y'all, even the moment of gratitude ritual that we have, it's ritual that I pull from Sankofa. It's all the same thing, and that's why we pour a lot of care into these spaces. This isn't just a conversation that people are having, and I'm so glad that you were able to go through the model that we use, because we have seen folks who decided that they was just going to have a similar conversation, similar circle, with no training and expertise, and it can fail miserably. This ain't an Oprah style discussion. We're not just talking about people who are just, want to have a good chit chat with your friends. And so I'm encouraging, for those of you who find this something to be of value or of interest, prepare yourself. We have provided, if you go to the Eventbrite link, you'll see that there are clips to 2 videos. One of the videos is taken because the topic is going to be one that was really polarizing for a number of people who listen to me talk about the rise of white Christian nationalism. And so we're going to be looking in this Sankofa circle at the resurgence and impact of white Christian nationalism and the way it is shaping our experience as Black people. And we're going to unpack a lot of it. And as I said, Brian, you and I are facilitating this. So this is going to be, oh, wow, we've got 5 seats left. Oh, snap.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
Okay. Well, you and I are going to,
So,
God, okay.
and I
Yeah.
just want to say to the audience, I've had a chance to watch Lurie when she goes live. Obviously, I've seen the comments or heard the callers when they do the call in. This will be an opportunity for us to really engage in a therapeutic conversation together. She talked about sometimes we may disagree, especially with this topic, because even in her comments, everybody wasn't on the same page. But as you'll see in the clip that of the video we sent, at the end, we're holding hands, we're calling response now more than ever. And one thing that's essential is, different as we are, light skin, dark skin, different economic brackets, different parts of the country, whatever it is. When you go through these Sankofa circles enough, you start to realize that our similarities are far more than our differences, and we are dependent on one another. And that's what's been so critically important and about these circles. And we're excited just to invite you. We feel like now more than ever, it is essential that we carve out our own space to make our own plans. We can support Black businesses. One thing she didn't say, all of our Sankofa circles in person, we provide food from Black businesses. So we're making sure that we're encouraging folks to buy Black products. So it's really just a space to come together and cultivate a tribe. So we look forward to seeing you. And if this one goes well, we might have to make a master plan to do this on a more regular basis with you all.
Can I be honest with you? Of course I can be honest with you. You my man. But being honest with the audience, I need these.
That's
Right.
right.
So like even as much as like I'm excited to be able to provide this for other people, I need Sankofa. And it's not it's great. I cannot tell you how much I value being able to have this space, this urban view space where I'm able to sort of talk and purge and get my thoughts out. And those of you who used to follow me when I was blogging under the pen name Afro State of Mind, most of which are still available at afrostateofmind.com. I have not taken that site down, although I took down the YouTube channel, or most of the videos on the YouTube channel that talked a lot about the stuff that I was writing about. It is different for when I'm here. I'm able to talk with y'all. I'm able to inform y'all. I'm able to explain things to y'all. In a Sankofa circle, we are in dialogue together. It's similar to how I know even when we have the callers call in and we are able to experience each other through that model, the difference is in a Sankofa circle, it's not my show. Right? In a Sankofa circle, I am in a process of learning and growing as much as everybody else in the space. And so, Brian, you and I are going to be facilitating this conversation.
Right.
And I do love when we get to facilitate together. It's a lot of fun. But I have needed this. And so, as awful and as challenging as this moment has been right now, I am so grateful that we are in a situation where we get to have these sorts of formulations. And for those of you who cannot participate in this Sankofa circle, or perhaps you're not able to participate participate in any of the ones that we provide, either in New York or in the our nonprofit still does the work of providing these as a community work. Next in Pittsburgh, here in Philly, shout out to Dr. Asada Richards in Houston, who we've had on this show before with the Sankofa Research Institute. Think about how you can create formations that are going to allow you access to this same sort of thing. Yes, we have something that we have perfected, but we ain't the only ones who the spirit can move
Right.
through and who the ancestors be communicating with. Think
Right.
about how you can show up and create these sorts of formulations as well. Brian, we got to go because the man is going to cut us off and we have to shift gears and bring on our next guest. But any final words that you would want the people to hear or to know about just in relation to the concept of Sankofa circles generally?
Absolutely. I just want to say that, first of all, I appreciate you allowing me to be on the show, and I just look forward to getting to interact with your audience on a deeper level. I'm just looking forward to seeing what God and the ancestors has planned in this endeavor.
Ashe, ashe, ashe to that.